Peace, peace. Abargani, Islam, Salam, Hetepu, Rahubat, Ginolako Ninani, Chief Noble, Bandele, Elamine, back in the building. All right. And today's episode, if you will be about the alternatives to child support. Basically, we'll be talking about creating a private child support agreement. Okay. So I hope that you guys are ready to get some understanding and look at the alternatives to child support. But before we get into that, please check out our page, New Kemet TV. Like this video, smash the like button, subscribe, and please pass this along. Please share, share, share. Okay. So, with that being said, let me hit you with an ad and we'll be right back.
Oh, if they just let me see, or it's just on me. It's showing me the light. Once they set us free, knowledge is the key. Guiding me alright, and that feel right.
All right. We are back. And for that ad, you can check out all of my books. And I have Brother Amin, my Aunt Ross books. I also have Brother Abdullah Bey's books. And I also have King El Bey's books are all on the site. So you can go there, or you can also go to Amazon for a lot of these books. The book that I have on the screen is one of my books called The Birth Certificate Explained and How to Avoid Birth Certificates. So much like this video, it discusses, the contracts that you'll need to put in place and how to deal with the agreements. Okay. So please check out this book. You can find this book also on indigenousmoors.org, or you can go to Amazon and get this book. Okay. So please check out this book. So tonight we're going to be dealing with child support. Child support has been an issue for years. It's been a stifle to some, a nuisance to some. Also, it's been controversial, very controversial. The fact that people, are not happy with how much they have to give, or the fact that they shouldn't be giving it to the state. The state shouldn't be interfering with, what's going on with your child and your family. So what we're going to do tonight is show that, you really can avoid the child support system by the state by actually creating your own child support system, which is really a private contractual agreement. So what I'm going to do is show you a couple, to show you that this is real, right? I'm going to show you a couple of places and sites that already have this idea, so you can understand that the idea is already in play. Okay. So I want you to look at this one right here, right? So this one, it says choosing a private child support collection agency. Okay. So now, and I want to say too that, when we're talking about a private child support, we're talking about religious. Okay. For us, we understand that using our religious temples, our religious institutions, that we can protect ourselves, and we can use our religious institutions as alternatives from the state. Okay. So that's what we're really talking about. Private religious child support. This is not here to bash. We're not here to try to tell you not to do anything, not to pay child support, anything of that nature. What we're saying is, everyone should be responsible for their children, and financial stability is also part of, finance is part of raising children. we all know this, right? So at some in some capacity, you should be supporting the child, okay, financially, and also, in all other ways as possible. But for the at least the financial side, particularly, with men, that's pretty much what has been known as the job of men, is to financially protect the child financially, and and to protect the family. So with that being said, let us look at this particular article. So now you see it was a private it say it was a private child support. Now, we're not going to get into the name of this company. I mean, you guys can look it up if you want. But actually, the Moorish Temple of New Kemet. This is one of the many things that we do here. Services that we have is that we are able to create a religious private child support. Okay, so it says right here, we've studied the characteristics of a reliable, credible agencies and some of the factors you should consider when following. Okay, so these are the things that you need to consider, not just when you're looking for an agency or credible, but really what is going into the agreement and what's going to go into the private child support um, agreement. Okay, so let's look at this. The first thing is the contract, and we're going to look at a contract. We're going to look at a general contract so you guys can get a general understanding. I'm really going to, drop a jewel. So please bear with me and, continue watching the video, because I will drop some jewels for you guys to get a better understanding. Okay. So it says the contract should be in writing. Okay. Be easy to understand, have signatures for both for you and the private agency. The like, so what they're saying is you should have a signature from the mother and the father, but you should also, it's going to be with, they call the private agency. The private agency would be the Temple of New Kemet, right? So the private agency, and if any part of the contract is unclear or confusing, you should ask a private agency plenty of questions and request clarity in writing. So that's something that you might want to need to do. We have no problem with doing that if there is any confusion. It says support collectors uses a contract intentionally written in a 10th grade reading level to help parents understand its terms. So it shouldn't be, a whole bunch of legalese. It should be very easy to understand so that there won't be any discrepancies. Because one of the things when you try, like, if there's a problem with the contract, these are the things they will attack. They'll say that the contract was too vague, or the contract was uh, too hard to read, or things of that nature. Okay, so you want to make sure that it's very easy to read and everybody understands the terms. Next thing is going to be the contract amount. You're going to look at how much the contract amount is, the amount you're asking the agency to collect. So the amount is going to be what you're going to need, what you're going to be asking for from the parent. Okay, some agencies call it a specified amount or some other a variation. Okay, but that's we're not going to go all into that. But you'll need to will you'll need to have an agreed contract amount. And then the terms of the contract will be the length of the contract. It should be stated in terms of dollar amount to be collected, and the length of time. So let's say you're gonna send $500 a month, um, for a period of till the child becomes 18. Okay, or it could vary. You could say other variations of that, but or you could go up on it. You could say, like, I'll be paying this much until they turn a certain age, then I'll may increase it by a certain age, things of that nature. These all would be in the length of the contract. So you got to have a length of a contract, how long it would be, and then the fees. Fees. Now this is something that the agencies are doing, but part of the temple is not necessarily a fee for maybe just the initial contracts that are put together. We will do that, but other than that, you'll have just a one-time fee. Okay, so um, then you'll need to keep track. You'll need to keep verification and a track record. The track record, you should use a well-established agency that has a history of strong collections and customer satisfaction. Okay, so I'm not gonna get into that, but the track record, they're saying that maybe like New Kimmy do have a good track record with this or whatever. But I'm also saying that you need to have a record. Now this other stuff kind of is for the collections, but as far as the religious agency, they don't need these things. Okay, we're not looking at all that. Okay, so that was the basics. That was the basics of what you're really going to be looking at. So let's look a little bit further at kind of like tune in on the contracts. Okay, so let's look at this. So you got another group. This is another legal group. This. If you look at the number, this is like a number out the country. Okay, so we're just using it for the term to show the diversity of contracts. Okay, because you're ultimately what you're doing is you're creating a contract. Check. All right, so we got private child support agreements. When, why, and how. So this one is just basically. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit more. All right, so it's saying that generally the child support agency governs child support payments, right? We usually go to the child support agency or the state, or and we all know that the child support system is not necessarily a state institution, but it has contracted with your state. Okay, so when I say the state, it's the child support system that the state uses. Okay, so if that makes sense. Okay, so what it's saying here that usually the child support agency deals with this. Having said that, separate parents do have an option of coming to their own agreement about child support that may not involve the child support agency, right? So this is what we're talking about. It's known as a private child support agreement. A private child support agreement is written agreement about child support and can include payment of cash to a primary carer as well as payments of non-cash, such as we can get into school fees, health insurance, extracurricular activities. Like they might be in some kind of sports or something, right? And there's money or things of that nature that's involved. So I'm saying there's two ways to formalize a private child support agreement. Now, this is not a standard per se, but I think this is a good introduction to show you kind of what contracting will be about when you're dealing with a child support agreement. So it's saying that you have a limited child support agreement or a binding child support agreement. Okay, so both a limited and binding must be in writing. So both of these must be the same, but there are key differences. So the limited, the LC, to enter to a limited one, there must already be an administrative assessment by the CSA, by Child Support Agency. Now, alternatively, the binding agreement does not require that assessment. So what we're really going to be dealing with will be considered a binding agreement. Okay. Now, there are people who already have child support in place. They have already been taking the child support and things of that nature. Matter of fact, there was somebody who that I talked to that wanted some assistance because they were already put under child support and they had not been paying child support, but they had been paying the mother, straight to the mother. He wasn't going through child support, even though he had a child support order. And I asked him, well, why didn't he do that? Because it makes sense for you to go ahead and just take it through the child support since you're already there. Well, I'm not going to get into the explanation, but nonetheless, they were child support was calling him back into court, summoning him in court because he had defaulted, if you will, on his child support payments. He hadn't been paying them. So, a lot of times depending on the amount, you could be jailed, for a period of time or things of that nature. So um, he was told that if he had record of giving them the money, and he did say he had a cash app, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, right? But so he did say he had that, so he was going to try to use that to show that he'd been paying to hopefully offset the amount that they had asked for. Okay, now we all know that child support they also making money off of this account. So whenever you give money to the child support, they're going to take a small amount of that money for their institution, right? So I don't know why he did it that way, but we're going to kind of discuss those things that happen like that, and that's kind of what this was talking about on this particular uh, part on this page right here, right? So it's saying that payments for support to the limited agreement must be at least equal to what the administrative. So we're not even going to really get into the limited, but you understand, like a limited one is based off of the fact that you already have an administrative account by CSA. So they're saying that if you're gonna create a private one, then you need to. It's got to be at least equal or more than um, it has to be equal or more than what you're paying already from child support. Okay, but a binding one, parties wishing to enter a binding one must obtain independent legal advice prior to signing. Okay, so that's going to be part of the agreement that you guys either have waived your legal advice or you have gotten legal advice when you're doing this. Okay, and a lawyer for each party must sign and attach a certificate of independent legal advice to the BCSA for it to be binding and final. Okay, so that's something you need to know. Well, when you're dealing with religion, you may not necessarily have lawyers, but you'll have ministers. So what we have is ministers that will replace that, and they'll sign off on these things, right? So it says, in contrast, there is no requirement to obtain independent legal advice when you're signing a limited one. However, we do recommend you get legal advice. A limited agreement operates for the maximum of 3 years. After this time, the agreement may be unilaterally terminated by either party. On the other hand, a binding one is final and can only be terminated with the consent of both parties. And that's what you want. The binding one, okay, that's why it's binding. See, a limited one is only 3 years, but a binding one is pretty much permanent, okay? And or by way of terminating event as defined in the agreement. Okay, so like we talked about earlier, having a particular time frame. So you'll be like, well, this will be terminated by when the child turns 18, or if the child turns 18 and doesn't go to school. However, if the child goes to school, it might last till 21. Okay, things of that nature. It's all things that the two parents need to come together on. Now it says that if your unemployment is unstable, okay, but you still want to formalize child support for a defined period, limited may be best for you. This type of agreement can provide certainly regarding your payment obligations and can assist separated parents. Now, it says alternatively, if your job is secure, then you might want a binding one. Now, I will say this: if you do have a binding contract, um, like this is a contract. So with a contract, you can really kind of customize it to fit your needs. So what we can do would be that there would be terms about if things change economically, then we would change that. You don't have to always have this. It may like if you're not making the same amount of money you made 1 year, then you might change that. Okay. So just for food for thought. So let's move on to the next script. All right. So now let us look before I go in there, y'all. Please, like I said, smash the like button and subscribe. Okay. Now, like I want to say, like I said, contracts are private. Understand that these contracts are private. All right. So let us go to our next page. Okay, so now we're this now this is the jewel. If you guys are still here, thank you for still being here and listening to what I'm talking about. Um, so what I'm gonna do is show you a religious child support agreement. Okay, and this child support agreement is a basic one. You know, you there can be much more. I ain't gonna say much more, but it's a lot. There are a lot more things I could say. Okay, there probably are a lot more things that you could add or that are maybe needed dealing with the particular situation, right? This is not maybe a cutter, you know, it's not a cookie cutter. It should be personalized. So when we deal with it, what we'll do is we'll create one and then we'll personalize it based on your needs. So this is kind of what you'll be dealing with. It says a religious support agreement. So first you're going to have the parties involved. We've got the mother, we got the address, contact information, the father, contact information. You got the child information with the child's name and their date of birth. And so the purpose of this, okay, is to outline the financial responsibilities. And this is a religious document. So the parents are committing to nurturing their child in a spiritually enriched environment. Okay. Saying guided by religious teachings and principles, including honoring ancestral traditions and the wisdom of the previous generation. So this is, because the New Kemet is an ancestral worship institution that basically is for any religious beliefs, but the basis is that we'll have that in our document. Now, if you guys, whatever your religious beliefs are, that would be added to the document. Okay, so don't get caught up in just what is being said. Now it says terms of agreement. So you're gonna have terms of agreement, financial support, monthly support payments. So this is breaking down the father or the mother. Okay, pays agrees to pay a monthly support of this amount on or before this date of each month. This financial commitment is seen as a sacred duty. Okay, and this additional expenses. So you might have education expenses, medical expenses. Okay, and you might even have like not on here, but you might also have expenses we talked about where you have sports. Okay, or extracurricular expenses. Um, and so now the duration of the support. So this agreement shall may remain in effect until the child reaches age of majority, which is, we're going to say, 18 years old. It could be 21 years old. Okay, one of those two, you guys would agree on the age, or until further agreement of legal modification. The duration aligns with the child's needs and welfare and the responsibility of the mother. It says to ensure that the mother support payments are received are used for the child's needs, including but not limited to food, clothing, health, housing, education, healthcare, etc. Okay, so the mother is going to agree to her agreement, like we have in here. The mother agrees to instill values of gratitude and stewardship as taught by their faith and the wisdom passed down from their ancestors. So, once again, you would include your religious belief that they would, if it's teaching whatever principles of your religion and the responsibilities of the father, which would be to pay monthly, timely child support payments as above. And like I said, it's not limited to this. So you could add other things that you would want to provide. Now it says recognizing the importance of fulfilling the obligations as a parent. Okay. Now we go to payment methods. Payment methods made through Cash App or whatever Venmo or whatever you're using, right? Uh, or bank transfers to the following accounts. So you have your this. Now this is important because let's say you're using a Cash App. Cash Apps have a bank account. You want the bank account. You want the bank number, and you want the routing number. Okay, you want the information of them both, and these are going to be the accounts you're going to use. It says that both parties agree to maintain transparency in transactions. So we're going to go through that. So then you got consequences of breach, non-payment consequences. If the father fails to agree to make the agreed payments, the mother may seek legal enforcement. So we're going to get into legal enforcement because it's like, well, how are you going to legally enforce a private contract, right? Well, first of all, understand that's the thing. That's why you have contracts because contracts are enforceable in the court of law. So if you have to, that's why you have to go to the court of law or through arbitration, which we're going to talk about that. So it's the same even now, but so we have with the father's agreement, if he fails to meet his agreement, his payments, and then you also have misuse of funds. So if the mother is misusing the fund, okay, the father may petition for an accounting in how the funds are being spent and request modification to the payment terms if necessary. Okay, always aiming at the children's best interest as guided by their spiritual values. Okay, so if if you have the right to take him to court, then he has the right to make sure that the money's being spent properly. Dispute resolution. So here we go. The first the first line of disputing is going to be arbitration. Okay, so this is also what keeps you private because you can arbitration is outside the courtroom, right? So we're able to make agreements, we're able to do court like things, if you will, without having to actually go to court. So we can still, even if we have a dispute, we can still be civil enough that we can deal with this in arbitration. Okay. Now understand too, that the arbitration is um, maybe the last step before it goes public, before you take it to court. So you want to make sure that um, that's what you want to make sure that everything is good. That you don't, this is like a fail safe to try to keep you out of court. But understand, if you go to arbitration and they win the judgment, then they can take that judgment to court, which we're gonna go into that a little bit, just a little bit, so you guys can have a understanding, you know, about it, and feel safe that you have some kind of remedies. Okay. And so it's just saying, it says wavering of legal advice. So this is the thing, when you guys make this agreement, you can waive your legal advice so that it can't come back on you because, like I said before, or something else that I looked at like the what was the case with Jeannie Mae and Jeezy, right? Jeezy messed up because somehow he was able to. She might have been able to get out that contract, that prenuptial, right? Because if you have a prenup and you didn't get legal advice, then that could be that's a that's a flaw in the contract. So the contract may be voided if you don't have legal advice or you didn't waive your legal advice. Okay, so you have to have the remedy for legal advice. Okay, modifications. So any modifications to the agreement can be made in writing, and both parties have to be sign it for it to be valid. Okay, and then you have your signatures. And then, like I said, this also, can be turned into a notary or a notary attestation. So you don't, so you can have, with a notary has state law, has state things. You know what I'm saying? It has the notary has state powers. So you're having a notary to your contract gives it a little bit more strength, right? But it's not necessarily needed to have a notary. Okay, contracts are very strong on their own. Okay, so that is just so now you guys have an example. You guys can go back and look at this and check it out. Um, so let's move on. Let us move on. So this one right here, let's see. Let's share this. So now it's saying entering your child support order with the court. So now let's just say about child support. If you have a child support, first let me go back. Let me just show you the blog. It says that can agreements on child support be made outside the court? Okay. So going down here, just going to get to the nitty gritty of it, right? It's talking about child support orders are legally binding documents. Okay, you got that. But entering your child support order in court. So once you've created a child support agreement, you can't enter it in the court. Now, let's say you are, for example, if you already have a court case, right? Say you already have a child support case. If you and the mother, which I know sometimes this is difficult, this may not be the best solution for, people who are, if you're on child support, a lot of times the mother and the father are not on good terms. The woman doesn't want to risk taking you and doing this because she thinks it's better that the state gets it, right? But just for the sake of it, if you two are able to sit down and come up with another agreement, which sometimes the agreement could be better than the agreement that you already got with the state, right? Or if you're talking to her and you just let her know what it is, like, I can't do that, and we can come up with our own agreement. What you have to do is, it is very important that you enter that agreement into the court. Your agreed child support order will not be legally binding. They say sometimes unless it's approved by a judge. So even, let's say, even if you don't have a child support order, if you have come up with agreement, then you two, to put it in, to bind it, to legally bind it, in some cases, you could take that to the judge. Okay. So it's saying your agreed child support order may not be legally binding unless you is approved by a judge. Now it says that the judge will review your case and your proposed settlement. If the agreed child support order seems to be fair, the judge will sign it, making it legally binding. However, if the agreement is deficient when comparing it to the amount the spouse would be required to pay under the, for this example, Washington child support schedule, the judge may not sign off on it. Therefore, it is best to have an attorney prepare child support order to ensure its approval and entry with the court. Now, I will say this: um, there is, I think I'm gonna put it in the description, but there is online where you can calculate child support. Okay, so um, doing that, you can create a more uh, realistic, child support amount and be able to do that. So uh, this is, the other way, right? So putting it, making an agreement, and then having it before the court. It says, why does child support order need to be approved by the court? It says the court's main concern is around the children. It's to make sure that their financial needs are met. So it says, by entering your child support order in the court, you are ensuring its enforceability through the authority of the Washington court system. In other words, if your co-parent decides to violate the agreed child support order, okay, and stop making payments, you will be entitled to seek enforcement through contempt powers of the court. You understand that? So the only reason why they say to do that is because you'll have a better remedy if there's a violation of the agreement. Okay, so that is uh, that's very important. Okay, so I want you to understand that. Now, the next thing is when we're looking at arbitration. So let's say you don't have a legal binding, you don't go to the court, right? Let's say you don't go to the court. Let's say it's through the religious institution. So the religious institution is doing all this. So how is the religious institution going to be able to make you or to enforce the measure? Well, that measure is through arbitration. So when we look at this one talks about, I'm gonna go back up here though, but we're not gonna go through all this. But it's enforcing arbitration awards. Everything you need to know. I like to read this though. Winning an arbitration award may not immediately end the dispute, especially when it comes to collecting payment from a losing party. Okay, so this is going to deal with that. What can what can I do with a arbitration award once it is rendered? Okay, an arbitration award can easily be confirmed as a court judgment. You see that? You see that? So what we're saying is that if you do have an arbitration award can easily be confirmed as a court judgment, which can be used to collect payment from a losing party through judicial enforcement. Okay, so that's the other way. We will use arbitration, and then we will go to court with that arbitration as a judgment. Okay, so I'm not gonna get into all that, but I'm gonna show you. You guys can look at it later. It says that it's the same. The proper method of seeking to enforce, because you want to enforce the arbitration, right? To seeking to enforce an arbitration award under the Federal Act. Okay, so you guys got to look up the Federal Act. Is to file a motion for confirmation in the appropriate court. Okay, this court must grant the motion and enter judgment on the confirmation order unless the opposing party files a timely motion to vacate or whatever. So this is how you would go about it. You would uh, you would file a motion, and it says this section is requires that the following be filed: arbitration agreement, all papers dealing with the selection or appointment of additional arbitrators or extensions of time, and the award itself. Okay. Each notice, affidavit, or other paper upon which the application to confirm the award is based. Okay. So in this, I want you to look at this. There's two things that were in the arbitration: the Uniform Act and the Federal Act. Okay. I'm not going to go into that too far. You guys can do some of the study. When you sit, you can pause this and read that right there. But that's kind of the scope of it. Uh, I'm just going to read this part right here. It says that since the Uniform Act itself provides that arbitration agreements made in a particular state are enforceable in that state's courts, it does not require that the parties include such a provision in their agreement. However, because of a wide scope of federal act and the possibility of interstate commerce may be involved in some aspect of the agreement of the parties, it would be prudent for all arbitration agreements or clauses to include language stating that the award is intended to be final and binding and enforceable in any court of competent jurisdiction. So I just wanted to read that. So when you're going to do this arbitration, once you get to arbitration, this arbitration uh, will be stated to be enforceable in the proper courts of competent jurisdiction. All right. So that's how we would handle doing it outside of the child support agency. Okay, because we know the child support agency has real strict. They got their claws in you, and really both parties, the mother and the father, are now under the scrutiny of how much money you make. A lot of people don't realize, but the mother, she's got to put down how much money she make. I've seen that many times where the mother makes more than the father did, and so therefore the money that they have to pay is less than what the mother would expect or would want, right? And there's been times where the state gives you less amount than what you were actually doing for the child in the first place. I mean, me personally, I've I've had that situation. So, um, I mean, I'm just saying. So there is these alternatives. We we have to, if we're going to live outside of the state. This is for both men and women. Men and women are waking up and they don't want to necessarily live under the state rules. So this is the perfect way to create your own system. Okay. So now the last thing I'm gonna show you, Last thing I'm gonna show you, get up out of here. And another thing, guys, please make a donation. Just if you got anything you can donate, would be great. Please make a donation to the temple to help us with all of our services and to continue the work. You know, for the growth. So anything is a blessing, if you will. Okay. Um, and with that being said, let's get to this next thing, right? So once you've had the contract done and you've got all that information in your contract, and you've got the information on the payment, right? Now, for example, like with the payment, if you do Cash App, you're going to give them that information, but I would put the Cash App numbers. Like, what is your credit? What is the number on the card? What is the numbers on the card, right? And the expiration date and all that. I would put that on there in the contract as well. But when you send money to the mother or to the parent, to the parent that you're paying child support to, what you must do, because the contract covers you, but to even make even more coverage, you need to put on this. And this is something you can do even if you don't have a contract. Something you must do. Because if you're sending money and you think just because you're sending money and you have record of the money that you sent, that could be considered a gift. You do not want it to be considered a gift. Because if it's considered a gift, the state is not going to use that as counting towards your child support. So, what I've done in the past, and what I do, and what I mean, and what we do, is when you give money. Now, I know people don't really do checks anymore or money orders, but sometimes they do money orders. If you do a money order and there's a place to sign on the money order, like a memo part, make sure if you get a money order, it has a memo part on there. You want to get a money order that has a carbon copy too. You better off than getting the one that you tear off. Okay, but if you have to, that's what you got to get. But on the money order, you would have, and this goes for Cash App. Like when you do Cash App or Vimo, there's a place, that you can type as a memo. In the memo, you must write child support, for child support, non-gift for the child's name. That is important. And the reason why is because this check is a negotiable instrument, right? This check, or if you're using a money, your Cash App, so you're making a transaction from one person to another. It's an agreement. You're giving them that with the memo that is non-gift, that is for child support. It's a non-gift. Once they have received it and cash it and use it, they're going by what you put on the memo. Okay, that's very important because you do not want your stuff to be considered a gift. So even uh, in the contract, like let's say in the contract, we go back. And I'm gonna get up out of here though after this, right? But even in the contract, you want to be able to let's go back. In the contract, you may add in this contract the responsibilities, like what the money is for, right? So like the expenses. You might want to add something to that. You might want to add, like, you know, so even somewhere in this contract, we would stipulate non-gift. Okay, that these things are considered non-gifts. And so, like, let's say, like clothes. Like, let's say you're buying clothes for the child. Like, so when it comes to responsibility of father, we might put in there also that for them to supply clothing or food or things of that nature. Like you say, right? We know that the money that we give them It's food. But what if we give the mother food, or you're giving the mother clothing or housing, or you're paying for these things, right? Those things will be added to the contract and not a non-gift. I mean, not a gift. It would be considered not a gift. It would be a non-gift items. Okay, so I just want you to understand that when you anytime you're doing something with that and you put it in writing, you also going to have non-gift in that as well. Okay, so um, with that being said, that's pretty much what we're covering. Um, we talked about the document payment for child support and Cash App and other payment apps. I personally think, using a Cash App versus um, money orders. I use money orders, years ago. Oh, and we tell people to use money orders years ago, and it is an effective way. But you have to store all of the, pieces of paper, or you have to, you'd have to take a picture. A good way to do it is take a picture of it and then store it somewhere, or scan them in so you can have a digital copy. But that is a little bit more tedious, instead of, or it's even more tedious to just keep those documents, because sometimes those receipts fade, or they could be lost, or they could ultimately get destroyed. It could be a fire or a flood or anything of that nature, or some kind of disaster, and you would lose, everything. Um, you're more likely if you got a cloud, like with so like what I like about Cash App or Vimo or any of these uh, ways to transfer money. Even if you got a bank in the bank, because you got a bank and the bank will keep the transactions as well. So like using a bank or Cash App in that, because like if you look at your Cash App, it gives you a record of every time you did the transaction, and it pretty much has what you said in the memo. So that's why I say that's an easy way. Another thing to do with it too is, let's just say that the mother doesn't have Cash App, or she doesn't have it. You can either tell her to get a Cash App, or you can get her, you can give her a Cash App card. Okay. And with that Cash App card you give her, you would put on there the stipulations with the Cash App card. So I mean, there are all these alternatives to going directly to child support. It's not always best to go to child support. So I hope that you guys got something out of that and enjoyed, learning. And I'll put my number up here. If you have any questions regarding this information, or you would like to join the temple, or you need services from the temple, you can give us a call there, or go to indigenousmoors.org and and get us that way as well. Okay. So with that being said, that's pretty much it. Appreciate your time. Peace and love. Tutanana.